Novorossiysk. Novorossiysk. Why did Ukraine carry out this shocking, historic operation in Russia? This is Unfiltered. You're with Darina Tichenko. Together, we will discover the cause of these shocking Ukrainian attacks that are knocking old Putin down. Plus, highly suspicious Russian activities in NATO countries and their negative and positive impact on Ukraine. Without wasting any more time, subscribe, if you haven't already, to OATV in your language. Turn on the notification bell and leave your comment below the video. Let's get started. The attacks against the grain terminals in Novorossiysk and other port facilities in Russia represent a significant turn in the dynamics of the conflict in the Black Sea, directly affecting Moscow's logistics infrastructure. These actions respond to several very clear military, strategic, and economic objectives. Main reasons in strategic objective: to deprive the Russian budget of foreign currency income. The export of agricultural products, especially wheat, is one of the main sources of foreign currency for the Russian budget outside of the hydrocarbon sector. The blockade or disruption of the main export arteries directly reduces the financial resources with which Russia funds the war. Symmetrical response and deterrence. Russia has systematically destroyed Ukrainian grain elevators and terminals in Odessa, Yuzhny, Chornomorsk, and the Danube ports. Moving war actions to Russian port infrastructure demonstrates that aggression against Ukrainian exports will have similar consequences for Russia itself. Paralysis of rail and land logistics. The suspension of grain reception at the port immediately creates a bottleneck in the logistics chain. This forces Russian railways to stop trains and impose transit restrictions, blocking key transport hubs within the country. Blocking the export of stolen grain. A large part of the grain extracted from the occupied territories of Ukraine, the regions of Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk, is legalized and exported through the ports of southern Russia. Impact on insurance and logistics risks. Damage to terminals and vessels in the Novorossiysk area drastically increases the cost of maritime war risk insurance and freight for ships operating with Russia, making Russian exports much less profitable or technically more complex. In conclusion, the disruption of the Novorossiysk port demonstrates how the degradation of strategic commercial infrastructure can stifle a country's supply chains, increase the cost of its foreign trade, and weaken its economic capacity to sustain the war in the long term. But how can I not mention the drone attack that destroyed 20% of a Wildberries logistics center in Bashkortostan? Impossible, but I will be brief. Following a nighttime drone attack on August 13th, a fire destroyed nearly 30,000 square meters, approximately 1/5 of the Wildberries company warehouse in Chishmy. According to satellite imagery analyzed by Radio Liberty, the visible impacts on the roof suggest that the internal damage could be even greater. With this incident, the number of logistics centers on Russian territory damaged or destroyed by Ukrainian attacks since mid-July rises to 21. The attack coincided with an operation confirmed by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine against the Gazprom oil refinery in the same region. Speaking of attacks on Russia, during the night of August 14th, a drone raid affected the facilities of the Ust-Luga port, located in the Russian region of Leningrad, causing a fire on the premises following 2 instances of damage caused by the impacts. According to local authorities, emergency crews were deployed immediately to extinguish the flames, while air defense systems claimed to have shot down 51 unmanned devices. Simultaneously, Russian commanders reported parallel attacks directed at the capital, Moscow, reflecting an increase in aerial pressure on logistics hubs and key infrastructure within Russian territory. There are so many Ukrainian attacks that I don't have enough time in the program, but I couldn't forget about the Orsk oil refinery, a strategic complex with the capacity to process 6 million tons of crude oil per year and produce key fuels like gasoline, diesel, and aviation kerosene, which was forced to completely halt its operations after suffering a drone attack on August 11th. The impacts of the ammunition and the fragments recovered in the area destroyed essential and irreplaceable components of the internal infrastructure, leaving its main plants out of service. Because the damaged technology is of foreign origin, the international sanctions imposed on Russia prevent a quick acquisition of spare parts, which will extend repair work for up to half a year. This unexpected shutdown has unfortunately caused a critical fuel shortage throughout the entire Orenburg region. As a direct result, local authorities have been forced to scramble to import fuel supplies from neighboring provinces, while also implementing strict rationing at gas stations. These measures are currently prioritizing only emergency response teams and essential service vehicles to keep critical operations running. During the month of July, Russian maritime exports of petroleum products plummeted by 54.7% compared to the same period last year, falling to 3.93 million tons as a direct consequence of systematic Ukrainian drone strikes against major refineries on Russian territory. The damage inflicted on these facilities forced unscheduled shutdowns for emergency repairs, drastically reducing crude processing capacity, fuel production, and shipments abroad across all maritime routes, with the Arctic ports suffering the greatest impact at 85.4%, and the Black Sea down 49%, even disrupting operations at key complexes like the Orsk refinery. During the night of August 14th, NATO aircraft intercepted and shot down a drone that violated Latvian airspace, triggering emergency alerts in 5 regions of the country. According to explanations from the Latvian armed forces, the unmanned aerial vehicle was not targeting their territory, but ended up deviating from its planned route over the Balvi municipality, due to intense interference from Russian electronic warfare systems operating in the border zone. Although the Latvian government has not officially confirmed the origin of the device, while field investigations are ongoing, contextual data suggests it was likely a drone of Ukrainian origin. This hypothesis gains strength as it coincides with a drone attack that Ukraine carried out that same night against the Russian port of Ust-Luga near St. Petersburg. Given that the most direct flight path to that strategic target runs along the eastern borders of Latvia and Estonia, the diversion caused by electronic interference explains how the device ended up flying over Allied territory before being neutralized. Russian hybrid warfare, as you can see, is not limited to Ukraine. It also includes malicious actions on NATO territory, such as espionage, sabotage of influence operations, and, according to Western authorities, attempts to eliminate individuals considered inconvenient to the Kremlin. The latest case was announced by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Poland's internal security agency and the police arrested a Russian citizen in Warsaw on August 7th, accused of preparing, on behalf of Russian intelligence services, the assassination of a man with both American and Ukrainian citizenship. Tusk highlighted that this is an especially serious case because the target was a U.S. citizen on the territory of another NATO country, Poland. His identity was not revealed, but the prime minister stated that he was a person who was inconvenient for the Putin regime, and the context is even more worrying. On June 15th, the Russian artist Semyon Skripetsky, known for his criticism of Putin, was murdered in Biala Podlaska. He was shot several times at close range. 3 days later, Polish authorities announced the arrest of a 36-year-old Georgian citizen as a suspect. In other words, while Russia maintains its war of aggression against Ukraine, its security apparatus and clandestine networks also appear linked to pressure that seeks to extend into European territory, a kind of export of Kremlin services, only here the product is not exactly a tourist experience. What is this? An exception? All of this points to the fact that it should not be treated as an isolated incident. Tusk warned that Russia will continue trying to eliminate or neutralize people considered inconvenient, and that Poland must prepare for new scenarios of this type. The logic of hybrid warfare consists precisely of acting below the threshold of open war, using agents, local collaborators, espionage, sabotage, disinformation campaigns, and possible violent operations to intimidate, destabilize, and punish those who support Ukraine or challenge the Kremlin's interests. The European Commissioner for Defense, Andrius Kubilius, has also warned Russia that it will continue to carry out provocations against Europe, including assassination attempts. That is why the case in Warsaw matters beyond the specific victim. If a foreign intelligence service attempts to organize an assassination within a NATO country, the problem ceases to be exclusively Ukrainian and becomes a direct challenge to European security. And precisely for that reason, the Polish authorities say they are reinforcing their counterintelligence operations. Because when the Kremlin sends spies and assassins to Europe, the line between peace and hybrid war starts to become quite a bit less clear. If you like this Infiltros video, give it a like, share the video, and leave your comments below. Let's continue. And since we're talking about Poland, friends, there is no better motivation to support Ukraine than Russian aggression. And precisely for that reason, the Poles, well motivated, are reportedly close to closing a deal to transfer old MiG-29 fighters to Kyiv in exchange for a large quantity of Ukrainian drones and technology for their production, according to Wirtualna Polska. These are Soviet aircraft that Poland is retiring from service and that had even been considered for scrapping. Now they could arrive in Ukraine in the coming weeks. Warsaw is especially interested in Ukrainian attack drone control technologies, communication systems, operational data, and examples of these devices. Why is Poland so interested in Ukrainian drones? Because the war has shown that they are fundamental to modern defense. Negotiations were blocked for months, but they started moving forward again after new proposals from Kyiv. Among them would be an offer from the Ukrainian company Firepoint to supply Poland with up to 1,500 long-range drones. Thus, the potential agreement would be much more than just trading old planes for drones. Poland would provide air capability that Ukraine can still use in combat, while Kyiv would share technology and experience acquired directly in the war against Russia. And as if that weren't enough, Poland could also deliver a new batch of missiles for Patriot air defense systems in the coming days, according to Interia. Deputy Defense Minister Magdalena Slupkowiak-Czarnecka stated that the decision will be made at the highest level, evaluating national security, noting that the defense minister is in favor of the delivery, considering it preferable to shoot down a threat over Ukrainian territory than for it to reach Polish soil. This measure follows the delivery of Patriot missiles in July, which generated harsh criticism from the opposition of President Novorossiysk. Friends, that's how we wrap up today. As you can see, Ukraine's actions not only slow down the Russian war machine, but also force Europe and NATO to act with greater firmness. I'm Darina Chechenko for UATV in your language. Until next time, Slava Ukraini. Glory to the heroes.